Coming back to the show, welcome to the podcast again. We've got legendary showrunner Marc Guggenheim. Thank you again for your time, sir.
Oh no! Thanks again for inviting me, and thanks again for the legendary description. I love that. That's awesome. I don't think it's accurate, but I will psychologically dine off of it.
All right, so you've done Arrow, you've done
Yes.
Flash, you've done Legends of Tomorrow, pretty much the whole like WB DC takeover for a whole generation that swooped up myself and several other comic book fans and geeks. And I was wondering if you can kind of lead us into Arrow, what got that going, and also before we bump into it, I want to tell you when I was studying television, I was using Arrow as my
Oh,
template for like the perfect pilot because
oh, really?
you guys mined that pilot for the whole show. It's absolutely incredible. I tell people to watch Arrow, watch the pilot, and see what they did with the show.
Well, thank you. I mean, I have to give, if not all the credit, certainly the lion's share of the credit to David Nutter, who directed the pilot. The thing about David Nutter is he's the Steven Spielberg of television pilots. I mean, David Nutter, he's probably most well known for actually directing the Red Wedding episode of Game of Thrones, along with a whole
Oh,
bunch of other
wow.
episodes of Game of Thrones. But David's true like superpower, his real talent is directing a pilot, which is different than directing an episode. And he's directed basically his record is something obscene. It's something like I'm gonna get the numbers wrong, but I'll get close. Of if he's directed 20 pilots, 18 of them have gone to series. Like
Wow.
19. It might even be a perfect record. It's ridiculous. He did Supernatural and Flash and Arrow, and of course I'm blanking on a million other pilots that he's done. But this guy's body of work is crazy, and to work with him, it's amazing. It's actually like it's such a privilege because it's like the guy was grown in a lab to direct. It's weird, but like it's a it's such a pleasure to work with someone who is so singularly good at what they do. And this is a very specific skill set because a lot of episodic directors can't direct pilots, and a lot of pilot directors can't really direct episodes. And even though David's a very good episodic director, his true talent, honestly, is in directing a pilot, which is a lot more complicated than I think people understand. You're not just setting the look of the show, and you're not just casting, and you're not just setting tone and everything. You're all that stuff like is important, but like the job really begins like on day one once this pilot script gets picked up to production, because it's dealing with the studio, it's dealing with the network, it's making presentations to them, it's developing lookbooks and decks and doing all the things you need to do that really sort of impact the subconscious part of that decision to pick a show up to series.
Wow.
And and just with Arrow, like, and the thing is, if you go back and you look at the Arrow pilot, I mean, I thought the amount of production value is insane.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot. The thing about David as director is he's not a very flashy director. No, but he's not a very flashy director. He doesn't move the camera a ton. He knows how to set a tone, and he knows how to get out like every morsel of the script onto the screen, and really establish again what a show is. So when you say like that we mind every second out of the Arrow pilot, a good chunk of that is things that weren't in the script, the things that David established.
Really?
Oh yeah, like I mean, little things like the salmon ladder, for example, that sort of the show became famous for. It's something
Yeah.
for that wasn't in the script. What happened was, Steven, while we were in prep, Steven started training for the pilot, and he was working with a guy who trains the people who do American Ninja Warrior.
Okay.
Steven, just really fun, would send iPhone videos of his training sessions to David, and he sent the salmon ladder one day, and David's like, "Okay, I've never seen that before. That's got to go in the pilot."
That's awesome.
And it ended up in the pilot. So, a lot of credit to David, and a lot of thanks to you for the kind words. That was a great pilot experience. It was but you asked how it came together. And the way it came together was, Greg Berlanti and I, along with Michael Green, co-wrote the critically acclaimed, Oscar-nominated Green Lantern movie starring Ryan Reynolds. Actually, it was
I
not
mean,
critically acclaimed.
I wasn't gonna bring it up, but we're
Oh
here
no, I'm
now.
happy to talk about it. Suffice it to say, it was not a great experience for us. We wrote 5 drafts of a movie that we were very proud of. I always tell people a very simple Google search will surface the first draft, and it's
Yeah,
still the first
and I'm
draft.
sure. Yeah.
And then basically, literally, the movie got taken away from us. Greg was supposed to direct
Yep.
it. It was given to Martin Campbell. Michael Goldenberg was brought in to rewrite it, and
Wow.
it just became something different than what we had written and what we had intended and what we had wanted. So the movie came out in the summer, and that summer coincided with Greg returning to Warner Brothers. He had originally been under a deal at Warner Brothers, then he went to ABC Studios, and he was back at Warner Brothers, and he had come back to Warner Brothers with an idea for how to adapt the Green Arrow for television. But then, you know, in between those initial conversations with Warner Brothers about Green Arrow, and him actually returning to the studio, Green Lantern came out, and we're getting, sort of pilloried in the press, and it's not a particularly fun time. And Peter Roth, the head of TV, is going, well, where's that great Green Arrow idea? Greg and then brought me in, and we're both having a conversation like, do we really want to do this? Like, do we want, do we want to go through that again? That was not a fun experience. And also, we don't want our names on another bad DC adaptation. I mean, God,
Right.
not even just a bad DC adaptation, another DC adaptation with Green in the title, for God's sake. And so it was like a pass for us. We were like, no, pass, 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 pass. And eventually, Peter, who can be very dogged and very persuasive, just wouldn't let it go. In fact, you know, Peter even called me, like, and I'm like, what are you doing calling me for? Like, I'm nobody. And like, he was that desperate. Like, he really wanted us to do the show. So Greg and I started talking about, like, well, what would it, not what would it take from a financial standpoint, but what would it
Yeah.
have to look like? Because the lesson for us from Green Lantern was, don't let it get away. Like, don't lose control of it. Like,
No,
if
smart.
we're gonna go down, we're gonna go down on our version. If we're gonna fuck up, it's gonna be our fuck up, not someone else's fuck up that we're then blamed for. So, we basically said, okay, here's what it has to look like, guys. This can't look like a normal development process. What this is going to be is, we're going to take 2 meetings. We're going to meet with the studio. We're going to meet with the network. We're going to pitch this. We're going to pitch the entire show, the entire pilot, and what the series is.
Okay.
And at that point, you will either commission a script or not. There won't be an outline. There won't be a story error. There won't be notes on the outline. There won't be notes on the story error. You will literally, we're going to have 1 meeting, 2 meetings. You're going to get a script. And at that point, you will decide whether or not you make the pilot. And by the way, no one can know about this. There won't be an article in Variety. There won't be an article in Deadline Hollywood. No one can know about this. We're just going to go off into our writing cave, and we will come out with a script, and you will either greenlight that or not. There will be no, like, well, we'll give you notes, and then maybe we'll greenlight it. Like,
Right.
you're making a decision. It's going to be fish or cut bait.
So just
So
like a ride or die. Like, this
it
is
was, yeah, it's
happening. This is
basically
not
like,
happening.
yeah, we're not
Wow.
going to, we're not going to open ourselves. It wasn't that we were being precious. It was, we got so burned by the development process on Green
Yeah.
Lantern that we're like, we're not going to go through a development process.
Okay.
We're gonna go, we're gonna ride or die on what we have, on the
Amazing.
page, and it's gonna be that.
How many
And
seasons did you pitch them when you're doing this pitch?
we didn't pitch multiple seasons, apart from saying that we knew that the flashbacks components would be 5 years.
Okay.
And we
All
were
right.
kind of
So,
contemplating a 5-year show. We weren't
okay. All right.
really thinking past 5 years. And when we had that original meeting, it was mainly focused on the pilot, along with, sort of like, things like who's going to be the big bad of season one. Where is, where is this story headed? Where do we want Oliver by the end of season one? All of that
Awesome.
sort of thing.
Okay.
And then, some very pie in the sky ideas, for, that we ended up doing. In fact, part of the pilot process of getting a pilot picked up to series is you have to write like a series document or a Bible, or everyone's got
Yeah.
a different name for it. And in that Bible, were pretty much like, the way I sort of describe it is we had certain cards that we knew we wanted to play, and in that document are pretty much all the cards, like even including like Oliver coming out as the Green Arrow and being publicly known as the Green Arrow, that
Okay.
happened at the end of season six. That was part of the original series conception. There was
The
a lot of things covered.
Like the Russian mafia thing.
The Russian mafia thing. The Russian mafia thing was something that actually came in. That came in at the script stage.
Okay.
That was something we discovered at the script stage. I don't think that
Yeah,
was part of
that
the
was I love that subplot, man. And the
original.
fact that
No,
you don't see that for like multiple seasons after the pilot, I was just like chef's kiss.
Oh well, thank you. Well, actually, one of our favorite one of the favorite things that we did was in season five doing the real Bratva flashbacks, and
Yeah.
that was really enjoyable. We got very lucky that we were able to really tell the story that we set out to tell. Greg and I had previously worked on a show together called Eli Stone. We worked on several shows, but we had co-created a show called Eli Stone, and
Yeah.
we never got the chance to sort of tell all the stories that we wanted to tell. And what was so great about the Arrow experience was we really got a chance to tell all the stories. In fact, when the decision was made to end the show, it was really this mutual sort of decision. It of course started with Steven going like, I'm not so sure how much longer I want to do this.
Yeah.
But that really coincided with, kind of have played all the cards. Like literally there
Yeah.
was one card left, that hadn't been played in the deck, and that was killing all. Because I went into the series pretty much from jump with the belief that Oliver needed to die at the end of the series.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and yeah, it just felt like his arc is ultimately a redemptive arc, and the
Yeah.
ultimate redemption is sacrifice, in my opinion. So, but like, okay, well, we're down to the last card on the deck. It seems like it's time to wrap this thing up. So,
Were you guys hitting burnout? I mean, you had Arrow, you had Flash, you had Legends of Tomorrow.
well, it's funny. I was lucky. Apart from the crossovers, I only work on Arrow and Legends.
Okay. Okay.
There was a lot of burnout. I would say that season one of Arrow was probably the hardest season of my career. It was,
Really?
believe it or not, from episodes 2 through 8, we were doing reshoots on every single one of those episodes. It wasn't until we got to the mid-season finale where we were doing reshoots.
Oh my God.
It was so hard, and part of it was a hard show to do. I mean, we were kind of with Arrow. We were, I don't want to like, toot our own horn, but to describe sort of the challenge, we were cognizant of the fact that we were trying to tell a comic book, a superhero story for a new generation, not just of viewers, but a new generation of production, a new generation of television.
Yeah, you're
And a
right.
lot of it was figuring out from a production standpoint how to do that. And we didn't get it right, like, out of the gate. It took a lot of trial and error, and it was exhausting, because we did 23 episodes that first season. When you're, practically reshooting half of those episodes, that means if you're reshooting, it means you're rewriting. It was exhausting. I mean,
So
it
you're
really was physically exhausting.
just still kind of like trying to find the show kind of at that
Oh,
point.
we were constantly trying to find the show. In fact, I think if you look at season one, I look at season one as like, oh, I can tell you this is the episode we figured out this. This is the episode we
Oh,
figured out.
okay.
Like there's episodes where the show in the first season takes these big developmental steps forward
Yeah.
that were were pretty major for us. And yeah, I think if people sort of knew just how much learning on the job we were doing, they'd be horrified.
What do you think your biggest aha moment was then from that season?
Um, ooh, good question. There's, I mean, I can't pick one. I
Okay.
can list them. I can list them. So first of all, Felicity was a big aha moment.
Yeah. Oh my God. Incredible
You
character.
know, and really brought out of desperation, because the thing about Greg and I and Andrew Kreisberg, who was also involved, is we are all very bantery, like we write romantic comedies, basically. Like that's our voice, collectively. Arrow is not that at all. In fact, I said to Greg very early on in the first season, I said, we've created a show that we don't know how to write. you know, Felicity was just really this breath of fresh air. It's like, finally, there's one character that we can write. There's one character who speaks with the voice that we have as writers. And but
Who stands out?
who also, by the way, lightens everything. Like I was,
Yeah.
the thing that, originally, like I always say, Lost needs Hurley. You need a comic
Yeah,
relief
makes
character
sense.
if you're going to
Yeah.
have all this darkness. And originally, that comic relief character was supposed to be Tommy. And it, just, in the process of casting and putting things on its feet, like it just, even Tommy became sort of dark and
Yeah.
sort of tortured. So we just needed that comic relief character. So, part of it was a safety release valve for us of just, oh, finally a character we can write. And then the other part of it was like recognizing that we need another color. We know a brighter color in this
Yeah.
palette. So
Yeah.
it's not so unrelenting. Another aha moment was like episode 5, which was the episode where we introduced sort of, who I call Proto Deathstroke. He's got the guy with the Deathstroke mask and everything. And the aha moment there was figuring out how much story we could tell in the flashbacks, and how the flashbacks could work. Because, the flashbacks are one of the things that made the show so challenging, because it really is like doing like a second show. You've got to write it, you've got to cast it, you've got to, it's in completely different locations. There's no overlap except for Steven. And we had to figure out how much story could we actually move in those flashbacks. So like episode 5 was where that first sort of came to be. Episode 9, big aha moment there was we managed to shoot an episode without reshoots. Yay on us! Like I remember being in Greg's office. Greg and I usually screen the episode separately, but because it was the mid-season finale, we screened the episode in his office together, and we just like looked at each other afterwards and just breathed this huge sigh of relief,
That's awesome.
because like we knew that it didn't need reshoots. And it was like, oh, thank God. Episode 11, was, another that was like, to me, episode 11 was like just the first episode that, like, where everything just sort of came together. And like, but even like actually going back to like episode 2, like David Barrett directed that episode. He also directed the first season finale. And um the aha moment there was, David Nutter had set the bar so high in terms of production. In fact, after we did the pilot and before we got picked up to series, the studio called us in and was like, how are you going to do this every week on a network schedule, on a network budget?
Really?
And yeah, oh yeah, they were like, David had set the bar so high. And we kind of said some version of, well, we're not sure, but we'll figure it out. And David, Barrett was so critical in helping us figure it out. In fact, now I think if you look back, even if you compare the season finale of season 1 to the pilot, I think the pilot looks small. Because we kept pushing the production envelope throughout the first season. So like
Amazing.
episode 11 with like this parkour sequence was a good example of like, okay, we're pushing the envelope. So again, it's like we're figuring out character stuff, we're figuring out tone stuff, we're figuring out the flashbacks, we're figuring out how to produce all the action. It was a lot. Like it wasn't one steep learning curve. It was 10 steep learning curves.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
I don't want to keep you too much longer. I do want to
No,
say though, what
I got 10 more
just
minutes.
some
So
okay, just as a viewer, for me, what I loved is thematically how the present day Oliver stuff and the island always matched up per episode. And then like that is brilliant writing.
Well, thank you. I resisted it like you wouldn't believe.
Really?
That yes, because it's not that it's brilliant, it's that it's really, really, really difficult. Really difficult. And the network kept asking for it, and I just kept resisting it because I'm like, this is going to be so hard. I'm like, and the show is already so hard. But
Right.
I'm glad the network insisted on it because it did make the show better. It did elevate the show. The show at its best really did have the past and present talking to each other.
Yeah.
It's just hard to do that for 23 episodes out of a season,
I bet.
so, and I think, by the way, I think one of the things that helped, and I forget, I'm ashamed, I don't remember who was the director. I want to give the credit to Glenn Winter, but who was our DP for the first two seasons and directed, I think episode 5 or 7 in, no, 5 or 6, 5 or 6 in the first season. But I think he was the one who developed the idea of the transitions, like these very specific
Yeah, that was always
transitions.
fun.
And I think that really helped get the stories talking to each other.
Yeah.
It was a visual way
Clever.
of the stories speaking to each other as opposed to just a thematic way. But yeah, that was again a very hard part of a very hard show to do. But it was all worth it because
That's,
people,
that's amazing.
the love for the show was great.
It dominated television.
Oh, that's sweet.
It just did. So when I hit you with this question before, so hopefully I'm not catching you flat-footed again. So before I let you go, is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
Can't really think of anything. It's funny. I sort of, there's podcasts that end with like, if you could, tell anyone anything, if you could spread a message, what would you spread? And that's
Sure.
that's where my head goes. And honestly, like, the message is, you know, be we all need to be more empathetic with each other. We all need to try to see things from the other person's perspective. We don't have to agree with them, but we need a lot more empathy and grace in the world. And it'll make us all happier people, believe it or not. I'm of the school of thought that, like, pick a number from 1 to 12. That's the grade that the kids get a calculator that year, and they don't take math, and we teach them empathy instead. Because I think that's a skill that is in far greater demand than doing long division. Math teachers don't come at me, but I'm right. And that's, yeah, we just need more empathy.
That's beautiful. I totally agree. Mark, you're a legend. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Oh, thanks so much. This is so much fun. Great questions as always.